Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Our next presenters are going to be speaking about community-driven investment in youth for social and generational impact. We have Samir Chhetry, Director of Finance and Operations at Saskatoon Community Foundation, and we have Fred Reibin, Brand Manager and Stakeholder Engagement Lead at Saskatoon Community Foundation. I now ask them both to join us up here.
Thank you. Woo! Woo! That's pretty cool. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So we're in the home stretch. Last few presentations. Good to see still some people here and some energy in the room. So as I said, we're from the Saskatoon Community Foundation. And as some of the other community foundations have already mentioned here, we've been around for a while. We've been around for 54 years in Saskatoon. And we exist in order to serve the community. And we do that through stewarding philanthropy where it's needed the most. And I think that question of where it's needed the most is really becoming more and more of an important question to ask within our communities and more of a challenging question. So Samir, tell them a little bit about some of the numbers around the Community Foundation.
Yeah, the group around here understands numbers better. So let me So we started from $50,000 of donations in 1971, and now in 2024 we have total assets about $110 million in our foundation. Last year in 2024 we collected, we were donated about $8.5 million, and we granted out $7.5 million to all the charities in and around Saskatoon area.
So starting off, I wanted to talk about this idea of wicked problems. Does anyone know this term, wicked problems? I didn't know if it was a real term or made up. I remember the first time I heard it, it was from a group of water researchers in Saskatchewan. And they were tasked with the big problem of water flow off agricultural land in the province. And right now, agricultural land in Saskatchewan is at a premium. So when someone is farming, they have a tough choice to make. Do they keep the water on their land, or do they drain it? And if they keep it on the land, they have less land to farm, lower returns. And then if they drain it, it goes and it might flood other people's land. And this has become a standoff. So there's kind of, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Pardon the dad joke. So this idea of a wicked problem, it's a problem that social complexity means that it has no determinable stopping point. And I think we can all relate to some of these huge problems in our community right now that we see, and they can feel really like these mega behemoths. And where do we even start? And how do we move forward in a collective way? So in Saskatoon, we've created this matrix that really looks at community health. And all these different factors come into play when we think about the health of our community. And as you can see here, even this matrix, there's so many different moving parts. There's many different stakeholders that we would need to engage. And everyone has a small role to play, but no one has an overarching role to play. So within the Community Foundation, this is a role that we have. We can see across multiple different areas, and we can play, I think as the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation mentioned yesterday, the way we look at in donation is, there's a wide variety of those definitions, but also the way we look at how we address problems is expanding as a community foundation as well. I think also the other thing we have to understand is when we start to address these problems, we need some form of measurement. Mm-hmm. And what we measure, then we can start to change. So who has heard about the vital signs reports that are happening in many communities? I see a few there. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, a lot of community foundations have heard of them. That's great. So Vital Signs is an initiative from the Community Foundations of Canada to look at some of the most pressing issues in our community. And we use a mix of available data as well as primary research. And so in 2021 was the last time we conducted vital signs within Saskatoon, and we found a few kind of high-level important issues. Collaboration, we need to look beyond just the silos that we all serve. We need to raise up the charities that are ultimately building up our community. Mental health, youth, homelessness, and equity rose out as some of the most pressing issues in Saskatoon. And then from there, what can we do?
So this is a kind of a snapshot of a very important and major issue that was stood out in Saskatoon, and we got this out from the report that we had, the vital signs report that he was talking about. So the first number that we look at is more than 500 people self-identified as homeless in Saskatoon within that data in about 2018, and if you go in 2022, that number has gone up to 550, but look at that red arrow that is showing in 2024, it has grown to 1,500 people. 1,500 people have self-identified as homeless just in Saskatoon area. And so that becomes very pertinent that the homelessness is becoming one of the key problems or issue that we have to tackle in Saskatoon. And then when you go a little bit deeper and look into the other data, then here 5% of the total homeless people, they identified as a youth, but that 5% has grown to 42.5% in 2024. So most of the people who are identifying them as a homeless are, the increased numbers are the youth. And 8% of them are categorized as children. So that has become the key issues. And then the other arrow that is showing in 90% as of 2022 are the indigenous community, and it has remained at around 90% in 2024. So now, what the data that we collected, and then the information that we are taking out from those, how are we going to set up like the community in the future, then to avoid those wicked problems that Fred was talking about? And then we said it is the youth. So like, youth should be the most important group of people that we have to serve, that we have to go and find out some ideas about how we do not have these issues in the future. There are some of the issues that is happening right now. There are some of the CBOs that are doing great job feeding those hungry youth people or housing all the unhoused youth people. But we need to think about not only now, what about the situation in the future? When we go in the future, can we create an environment with zero youth or zero people who do not need any homes, who are not homeless, who do not need any mouth to feed? That's a pertinent question that we have always asked in our community and whenever we do our research. And this is one of the questions, and then I wanted to highlight in there, in the past 6 weeks, we have asked 80 youths in the past 6 weeks, where are the main locations that you have been sleeping? And couch surfing, which was their friends, 48.8% of them are sitting with friends. Luckily, 60% of those 80 people have also said in the last 6 weeks, we have been in the apartment or house renter or owner, or they're living with the biological and adoptive parents. 50% of them at one point of time in the last 6 weeks, they have slept in the parking lot. Similarly, then if you go into, there's hotel, there's motel, there's car, there's street works, and there's stairways. So many people of them have been living not into their own homes, but into their friends, into their apartments, into the parking lots, and the situation is growing bigger and bigger. Every time I talk about all of these things, it just makes me so emotional from inside that there are a lot of things that we are doing right now, but there are a lot of things and opportunities that we still have that we can do to make the better future.
So what are we doing about it? And with these kind of things, the process you follow determines what you ultimately end up looking at. So one of the key guiding principles that we work with is if we're going to focus on youth, if we're going to focus on homelessness, whatever it might be, we need to start as close as possible to the people who are affected by it. And so we have a great connection with all the community organizations in Saskatoon, or many of them who are focusing specifically on homelessness or youth. And then from there, having the community conversations so we can get to the root of the problem from the people who are actually living the problem themselves. And then beyond even just the community organizations that serve youth, talking to youth themselves. I feel like that's been one of our greatest assets, and we'll talk about it a bit more later, of the guidance of youth within not only this challenge, but within the Community Foundation has been a very valuable asset. And then from there, you create some type of theory of change. What are we going to do to impact the change that we want to see? And it's not always perfect, especially with these complex issues. You have to build in iteration, reevaluation, and refocus. So before you invest too much time or energy, you have to test and see where you can, it's very much like an investment in ways. Where are you going to invest your time and money, and how can you change if you need to pivot? So again, talking about the community-led problem solving, when we went to the cohort of organizations and youth, some key themes came out. And one that has really formed our youth project is that, first of all, youth need support. We can all agree that there's a crisis within the youth, and if we can start there, we can actually work from the reality of it. And then when they receive support, then they make good decisions. And that's an ongoing bias that we have to challenge of, okay, they're not going to take a free ride. There's a harm reduction organization in Saskatoon, and what they said is there was a number of unhoused youth who needed support, and once they got into a stable home with a stable connection with an adult, the thing that they wanted to do was go to school or find a job. That was on their own self-determination. That's what came forward. So I think it's really important to start from there, especially, as we're working as a foundation, or sometimes we're a little bit removed from the realities, to let them guide and really listen to what it is that they have to say. And so what really came from this is we need to establish that secure connection with the youth first, or youth who are being moved around from foster care to foster care. They need that secure connection, and that might look very different than a 9-to-5 organization. They might need 24/7 availability to text someone, or they need to really truly build trust in a way that is beyond the scope of the operating hours in ways. So we need to also take a risk and invest in a program that isn't standard.
So, as Fred said, it was very important for us to understand the core problems of the youth. Then we wearing those suits, and then we cannot just write and then say, this is the problem that you have. So we can't, and then we are going to grant out to this community, this organization or that organization. But we really need to go into the community, into there. So we hired a person, we hired an agency, and then he goes into the community and finds the youth representations from the community, and then we bring them to the table, and then we call them Youth Advisory Council, which we always say YAC. The Youth Advisory Council is not, we didn't start just yesterday, but it has been going on from the last 2022. We have about 10 youth advisory council members every year. In an average, there might be 12 or there might be 8, depending on the availability of the youth and also the participation of the youth and coming to the table and talk about the actual problems that he or she is lived with or have seen their friends currently living with it. So those advisory committees, even from 2002 and then 2024, usually the cycle is about 3 times, 3 years of theirs, and then 10. So even if we calculate that, then that becomes about 80 youth members that has worked with Saskatoon Community Foundation throughout the period of time, and then they have graduated. When they graduated, that means that they have gone to the community with all the knowledge that they acquired while being the advisory council, And then these members, like when they went, they came back as a board member of ours. One, Freya, she started as a member of the YAC committee, and then later on, she went out to do the further studies. She came back into the community again, and then she was the grant chair. And then after the audit chair, and then now she became the board member. So what an amazing journey that she had. The other person, Ariba Bilal, I can give you an example of a youth who was a youth advisory committee members, and then once she graduated from the YAC, then she went back and did further study in Ottawa, had a master's of public administration, and came back to Saskatoon again and is helping out other CBOs to write grant applications and suggesting where the funds should go to. So these are quite amazing examples. There are other YAC members who had gone out and became doctors and engineers, but they have always loved. They come back to Saskatoon Community Foundation, and then they talk to us about different contributions later on that they are making. So even the contributions of those YAC members are inevitable. But so the YAC members, we have about $3 million of funds in the YES, which is the Youth Endowment of Saskatoon Fund, and then we grant about $100,000 from these YAC community members. They go into the community, they ask for the applications. When the grant applications comes to them, then they do the assessments, these 12 years to 19 years of youth, and then they do all the applications review, and then they grant out the money to these programs where they think that the community is to be focused. So that's an amazing program that we're running, but that is the current solution. We have to think about the future too, as I said. These are all the transactional. I categorize them as a transactional and then transformational. So we need to do some transformational change and invest in these youth members so that in the next 10 years' time or next 15 years' time, there will not be the situations that we had to talk about right now. So what are we going to do for this transformational change? Then we went into the community again. We worked with 9 grassroots youth-serving, youth-led organizations. We collaborated. We, as a Saskatoon Community Foundation, acted as a collaborator, brought all the cohort members together in one table, and then started asking questions. What are the things that you are seeing in the community that we need to be addressed? So being part as a collaborator is one of the significant contribution that all the community foundations, including Saskatoon Community Foundations, we are doing, and so from the discussions that we had, from the meetings, from all the rigorous research that we did, one of the major problem or the solution, the problem and the solution was the system navigation, and that is the trust That is the trust that Fred was talking about from the youth. If you just think about a youth who is in crisis right now, and then the youth who is in crisis, and then he is trying to decide on which cohort, which organization should I go to? Should I go to there? They provide this, this service. This organization provides that service. So whatever. Do you think that the youth who is in crisis will be able to make a decision like that? No. But at the same time, he or she needs to talk to the person, or will be, open to talk to the person who has trust in them. They are not going to just open up. So, building a trust between the youth who is in crisis and find a person who is living in their life is the system navigation, and we call them system navigators, right? Mm-hmm. So, but again, so the cohorts also, the youth also, the research also showed that the system navigation program would help to navigate those youth from crisis, and then slowly we'll take them into a different step by step to become a better citizen with a, so now Fred is going to talk a little bit more about like how do we fund those system navigation or system navigators.
Yeah, so we have our Youth Advisory Council that's been around for a while. They're helping to make decisions, granting, really helping to understand the community and youth needs. And then we have this other project that's kind of emerging in terms of dealing with youth who are in crisis and moving them along. So as you know, when we talk about donations, measurement is super important. So the program we developed is called Generation for Change. And again, it starts first by acknowledging that the youth are in crisis, and then the measure that we've been using is called the NEAT score, and this is a measure that's determined by Stats Canada, and that's youth who are not in employment, education, and training. And across Canada, that youth score is about 12%. So translating into Saskatoon numbers, that's about 584 youth specifically. So we took that number back to the cohort of community organizations. They're like, that's way too low. And that's an important test as well, just to kind of get a reality check from some of the stats and the numbers. But either way, it's a vision that we can work towards that's concrete. So then we launched a test case, and we've been learning a lot. We're by no means have all this sorted out or figured out, but it's important for us to just keep moving forward and learning as we go. So our theory of change, it definitely revolves around the system navigation, and some of that text is a little bit small. You can look at it in the presentations afterwards. So it has 4 steps that takes a youth from crisis to connection with system navigators. And then once they have that foundation, then they start to look back into education, employment, training. And so that's that red line in the middle is kind of the beyond NEAT situation. And then once they have that foundation, once they're back working or whatever it is, then they can start to think broader about the community again. So that was our theory of change. And I think one really important learning is that when it comes to a donor, they care about 2 things. They care about the big vision, but it's also really important to make it real and make it concrete. So really what we're needing to begin with is we needed those system navigators that Samir was talking about. And we identified a number of them and where they would be and what their role was. And sharing the whole vision with the donor can be kind of overwhelming in a way, and there's so many different variables. It's the wicked problem. It's easy to find ways that it might not work. So it's definitely a learning that we've had to focus really specifically on what's tangible that they can focus on and then see that impact. So quick wins. And then how does the Community Foundation play a role with this? This is one of the first of its kind projects in Saskatoon. So we have all the community organizations. They all have a silo, a certain part. And so Community Foundation can look across those and convene them all together. And then we bring in the donors, and then we help to ensure that the project is going as planned. So we have a duty to make sure that any funds come in are used in a way that is going to be responsible. So we have kind of we're in a great position to see both sides, the donor side as well as the community side. And then again, here's our vision. The vision is to achieve 0% NEET in Saskatoon, and that equals 594 youth actually. And then this is this innovative approach where we go out, we try it, we get feedback, we come back, we make changes, and then we have this core funding that is not just funding. It's not just funding a capital project. Capital projects are easy to get funding for in the community. When it comes to funding operational salaries and things like that, that's where things get a little more tricky. So we need to make sure that we have the good relationships with the donors and we can show them that vision, that it's also made very tangible as well. And then we have the evaluation and the analysis that we can continue to report back on.
Yeah, so Vital Signs 2025, I just wanted to introduce you in the sense, Saskatoon Community Foundation, we are doing the Vital Signs report again 2025. When we say Vital Signs report, that it encompasses all the different aspects of the community. It's like a true picture of the community in a good readable report. And so all the theories that we have for the current need versus the future need, or transactional, granting versus the transformational granting, and then all the generation for change, the theory of change that we have proposed, where would it take us? We have lived with the data from Vital Signs of 2021, and there are other subsequent vital reports that we did in between. But then Vital Signs 2025 is going to tell us the true picture, and then it will also guide us to make any changes in the theory of change or in the generation for change that we have. And
so one thing to add to that, as the Community Foundation, we have a really unique role, and that a lot of organizations look to us, donors look to us, corporate looks to us, and says, where is the best place to make an investment into the community if we have these CSR dollars? So the idea with the Vital Signs 2025 is it becomes a tool that even we could take to the government and policymakers and say, this is where we need that investment the most. So it starts to take that wicked problem and break it down into levels that are manageable for everyone to understand and then to take action on.
So, as I said, thank you to all the CBOs or community-based organizations, again, who are, feeding the hungry people and also, providing the house and shelter to the unhoused youth and other people. But at the same time, let's all think about how the whole generation of youth can be transformed into a society or into the era where these organizations don't have to exist, and then we'll be living in our own home, and then we don't have to worry about feeding any hungry people.
Yes.
Thank you. We have about 1.5 minutes, no, 10 seconds, 9 seconds to get the questions, and please. Thank you.
Question at the back there.
Thank you for your good work. I was curious if you are able to expand the money in your endowment, or if you're only able to give off of what you have. Like, is your income fixed, or can you expand the resources available?
Right now, the Youth Advisory Council that we've talked about is coming from all the field of interest funds and the endowed funds. But as being a community foundation, we have that flexibility in accepting the donations in different formats. One, we call it as a flow-through funds. One, we call it as a endowed funds, as you all know. And then there's another donor advised spendable funds too. So the funds, as per the donor's wishes, we can endow forever. We can take it and then spot it out for 15 years as a donor spendable fund, so it will be spent out in the whole. And then there are flow-through funds which will come in, and then. So when we started these then we created different type of funds by listening those donor wishes. So there are some of the donors which says, no, I want to donate $30 million, and then, but I want to go that money into the community right away. So then we have flow through. So to answer your questions, Wes, we do have the endowed funds, but it is expanded up to the flow through funds and also donated by spendable funds too. Yeah.
I know you're working on the Vital Signs 2025 report, but can you give us any sort of initial ideas as to what might be driving this surge in youth homelessness in Saskatoon?
Yeah, that's a good question. And when you see the number triple in almost a year, there has to be something that's underneath there. Something that we feel is driving it is there was a change to the social assistance program. Prior to that, the money was paid directly to landlords, and then after the change, it was paid to the tenants. And when you think about people who have different substance use issues and things like this, they have really tricky choices at hand. So when money is scarce, that's where it goes. So it's definitely a noticeable thing in Saskatoon, and that's one feedback we've had. But in this next round, that'll be something to dive in more. So in between, we have Vital Signs every 3 years, and then in between, there's Vital Focus, where you can go deep into certain issues, and it becomes less quantitative and more qualitative then, and that's when you start to uncover some of those deeper issues.
Don't have questions. We have 30 minutes off. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you.